President and First Lady test positive, Michigan changes its approach to COVID-19. Voter suppression efforts in Michigan lead to felony charges against two right-wing operatives. And the Beaumont merger plan falls apart. Today is Sunday, October 4th, 2020, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint as we arrive at the 1 month mark. 1 month until the 2020 election, which was thrown into further turmoil early Friday morning when the president announced that he and the First Lady have both tested positive for the coronavirus. Hours later, he was on his way to Walter Reed Medical Center. The concerns are many, of course, starting with the health and well-being of the American president. And no doubt an already bizarre campaign season will again have to detour around another sinkhole. I had no intention at all of talking today about Tuesday night's horrendous debate, though you do now have to wonder if that's it for the Trump-Biden debate schedule. But if nothing else, it is a powerful caution about the virus. All of the precautions and testing we were told were happening around the president and those coming in contact with him, and it still manages to get under the doorway. Now, as that was happening, the Michigan Supreme Court was announcing a decision ruling against Governor Whitmer's emergency powers and pandemic declarations of the last 5 months. And it throws into question so many executive orders that she's issued. It is still unclear whether or how this will roll back those many orders. The governor says they will remain in place at least for the next 3 weeks or so. But that came just after we learned that Michigan's controversial pandemic nursing home policy is changing. And we're going to talk about that this morning, about what that change means. And back to the election, we're also going to talk about the charges filed against two infamous political operators that the Attorney General says were behind a big effort to keep certain Michiganders from voting. Attorney General Dana Nessel and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson spoke with me earlier this week about that and the other issues swirling around election security. I should note that that conversation did come before the court's decision regarding the governor, because otherwise it certainly would have been good to hear the AG's take on that ruling. We're also going to talk today about the collapse of the proposed merger between Beaumont Health System and Chicago-based Advocate Aurora, a plan that could no longer bear the weight of so much pushback. It's a very busy Sunday today on Flashpoint.
Mail-in voting sounds great, but did you know that if you vote by mail, your personal information will be part of a public database that will be used by police departments to track down old warrants?
Now, of course, that's not true, but two rather notorious political operatives have been charged with being the forces behind that call, working to suppress the vote, not only in Michigan, but several other states as well. Jacob Wohl and Jack Berkman are now facing charges filed by the Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who is back with us again on Flashpoint, along with the Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Good to have you both with me. And Attorney General Nessel, let me start with you on this case. Do we have any idea how many people may have heard these calls?
Yeah, we do. In the metropolitan Detroit area and in the state of Michigan, about 12,000 people. Across 5 different states, about 85,000 people were contacted.
The two men that I mentioned that are charged, oddly enough, actually attached their names to this campaign, to this effort. So it wasn't very difficult for you to track them down. I have no idea what their defense on this will be, but I'm assuming other states will be coming after them as well. How likely is it that you're going to be able to proceed and prosecute this to the full extent that you'd like to?
We feel very comfortable with the charges. We would not have authorized criminal charges if we didn't think there was a compelling case here. We established a robocalling unit in our office just to track down illegal robocalls over a year ago. So it was very easy for us to track where these calls were coming from. We did send agents to California and worked in cooperation with the California Attorney General's office and executed some search warrants. And we feel as though there's substantial evidence to support these charges. And I do expect that there will be charges coming in other states as well. But, the message that we want to send to everyone is that, this is not a joke. It's not a prank. It's voter disenfranchisement. It's voter suppression. And it's illegal here in the state of Michigan and in many other states as well. And we're going to take it very, very seriously. When you mislead a person into deterring them from voting, that is a crime. It's a felony. And no matter who you are, no matter where you are, we will find you and we will investigate and then prosecute.
These two gentlemen that I mentioned are no strangers to you or to other people in law enforcement. They've been kind of busy over the years furthering right-wing conspiracy theories as well. Let me bring Secretary of State Benson in to comment on this as well. Jocelyn, I'm curious as to whether you think, which is the bigger problem that you worry about? Is it voter fraud or voter suppression, or are both of them a little overrated as problems as we head toward Election Day?
Well, I always look at two things, data and also, what has the greatest impact in relation to that data on citizens' ability to cast their ballots. And we know voter fraud is infinitesimal, but certainly we want to make sure any perception of fraud or concerns about fraud are addressed. And that's why we have so many security protocols in place for absentee ballots as well as in-person voting to protect the sanctity and integrity of the process. And then when it comes to voter suppression, it's similarly working to make sure voters are protected from any efforts to suppress their vote. And we do know that there have been escalating attempts to misinform voters about their rights. Robocall is a great example of one. And I think the example of our actions together, the Attorney General in my office, to swiftly react and address and correct this misinformation underscores how important it is for my office to ensure that voters are getting trusted, accurate information about their rights.
My pal Vince Keenan, of course, really made his chops on voter education over the years. I turned to him time and again when I need advice on these things, and he was telling me that voters need to be a little bit tough about this. They need to be tough. This is their baby, and they need to handle it. You can't get knocked off of your mission by either a phone call or somebody at the polls who might have a legal right even to challenge your vote, that you need to show up ready to fight for your right to vote. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. I've been saying throughout this cycle, voters need to be vigilant. They need to be fully educated about their options to vote this year and vigilant against any attempts to misinform them or others about those rights and the sanctity of the process.
Dana, I would assume you'd agree, because we might see people's vote being challenged at polling places. That's a right that voters have.
That's right. But what they don't have a right to do is to threaten people or intimidate them while they're trying to vote. And we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. We are in contact with law enforcement agencies all over the state, and I'm working very closely, in fact, with Mayor Duggan and with Chief Craig on this for the city of Detroit. So we want to make sure that if people choose to vote in person, that in no way, shape, or form do they feel as though they are being threatened while they are at the polls. Yeah. That's unacceptable. It's illegal. And people will be arrested and prosecuted if that occurs. But we also want to let people know that there's an avenue to turn to. If you feel as though you're on the receiving end of misinformation, you can report that to us at the state at misinformation@michigan.gov, and we'll investigate.
Terribly important. I want to let you both weigh in on where we're headed now on the vote count. We saw the decision where the vote has to, your mail-in vote has to be postmarked by the day before the election, but then it could be up to 14 days before it necessarily has to be counted. We had a judge this past week uphold the legislature's right to appeal that decision, and I'm wondering where you think we're headed on this. Let me start with you, Dana Nessel, because it doesn't sound like the state is going to challenge that judge's ruling on that.
No, I mean, we thought it was important that there be some sense of finality. I mean, voting has already started. Yes. So voters need to know when their vote will count and how exactly they should go about voting in the first place. So we felt as though it was important just to abide by the court's ruling. Now, there are a couple of challenges. The one that you stated, there's a challenge in federal court. And for those reasons, what Secretary of State Benson and I are doing is we are encouraging everyone to get their ballot in the mail. If they're choosing to vote by mail, no later than October the 20th, to make sure that between delays in the mail and whatever happens on these cases, everyone wants to make sure that their vote counts. And if you get your vote in 2 weeks early, you can know that that will be the case. And if you can't get it in the mail by October 20th, you can simply take it to your clerk's office, or you can take it to a drop box and know that your vote will be there in time. And also, there's a way to trace your ballot so that you know it's been received by your local clerk.
True. Secretary Benson, though, if even with people getting the vote in early, if we've actually got 2 weeks of lag time at the end of this, never mind knowing on election night who the winner will be, can you actually see a scenario where the election isn't certified for 2 weeks after Election Day?
Well, potentially, but that's some of the details that Michigan and other states. Well, I should also say first, the actual certification of the election does come 2 weeks after the election day. So nothing has changed there. And in fact, I suspect that's why the court ruling lines up with the 14 days. But that said, we want to minimize the number of ballots that are sent prior to election day and received after. That's the bottom line. And because we're just not sure, the current court ruling says they would count, that may get overturned. And so we want citizens to, if they're going to mail their ballot in, as the Attorney General mentioned, do it soon, but no later than 2 weeks prior to Election Day. And at any point, you can use your local drop box or return it at your clerk's office and ensure that it's received and counted on time.
You begged.
And if I can add a couple things, Devin, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, just to be mindful of the fact that for a voter, a family member, a resident of your household can take you to the polls, take you to the clerk's office, take you to the drop box. Or you can give it to somebody to actually drop off, as long as they are a member of your household, or as long as they're a relative or you have a legal relationship with them. But also, anybody can just drive you. Anybody at all. You can get a ride from, and they can take you right to the polls or to the clerk's office or drop box so that you can drop off your ballot.
We have so many people who are worried. They've heard about so many ballot applications being sent to one house, or even ballots in some cases. Jocelyn Benson, before as we get close to needing to wrap this up here a little bit, I guess explain the system, how this works with the qualified voter file that doesn't allow them all to be counted.
Correct. I mean, no matter how many applications you get, no application can actually be submitted, and you can't get a ballot in return unless you actually sign that application, or a voter signs that application and that signature matches the signature we have on file. So no matter how many applications you or anyone else get, or who sends you what, you only can get a ballot with one application and a valid signature. And then only one ballot can be sent per voter, and only one ballot will be counted per voter. So that's why it's so important that if you do vote by mail, sign the envelope outside the ballot in which your ballot is returned. If
only these were the last questions that I needed to ask you both before we get to Election Day. Thank you both so much for the time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Back with more.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Back with more on Flashpoint right after this.
The biggest Columbus Day sale ever starts now at Gardner White. Save an extra 15% off store-wide, or save with 0% financing for 60 months. Plus no tax. Plus free same-day delivery. Only at Gardner White, Detroit's #1 furniture store.
At Beaumont, we're always ready for change. So when COVID-19 changed the way our community needed us, we created change to serve them even better. Change that made safer return-to-work programs with on-site screenings possible. Change that let us pivot quickly and care for the most COVID-19 patients in all of Michigan. Because the one thing that will never change is our commitment to you.
Trends come and go, but luxury is always in style. During National Kerosene Month, receive a rebate of up to $1,000 on timeless kerosene styles. Elevate your decor with sophisticated designs and remarkable quality, including carpets steeped in a century of kerosene craftsmanship, as well as kerosene's brand new luxury vinyl and elevated wood, offering beautiful wood look flooring that is better than nature intended. Don't miss your chance to live beautifully on kerosene, only at Independent Carpet One.
The biggest Columbus Day sale ever starts now at Gardner White. Get a $300 gift card on the largest selection of Tempur-Pedic mattresses in Detroit with free same-day delivery. Plus, save up to an extra $300 off or get 0% financing up to 72 months. Only at Gardner White.
Welcome back. After quite a bit of criticism, the state of Michigan is changing its protocols for nursing homes during the pandemic, including the creation of care recovery centers. Let's talk about it with the director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Robert Gordon. Mr. Gordon, really good to have you here today. At the start, I want to talk about what I've mentioned a couple times on the program, and I'll see if you agree with me, but what I think a lot of this has shown us, it's kind of exposed a gap in the American healthcare system, hasn't it? A stop between a hospital and going home.
Yeah, well, I think COVID exposed a tremendous number of needs which unfortunately the country wasn't fully prepared for. But yes, I think that we have learned about the extraordinary risks which face older Americans and Americans when we're facing a pandemic like COVID, which is an infectious disease which attacks people with pre-existing conditions and attacks people who are at particular risk, and older folks are at the top of that list.
These care recovery centers, they're kind of outlined in the executive order that was issued this past week, but I'm not sure we really quite understand how these are going to work. Surely we have a number of nursing care facilities we've already seen in the state that would not meet the qualification requirements for it. How will these be created?
So it's important to step back. These are not a dramatically new idea. This is an evolution in a policy that we laid out in the spring. And the idea behind the policy is that when someone has COVID, we want to make sure of two things, particularly an older person in a nursing home or a person leaving a hospital who needs to go to a nursing home. One, we want to make sure that person gets the care that they need. And two, we want to make sure they get it in a setting where they aren't going to infect others who don't have COVID. And we did it in the spring with a policy called hubs, and we've now evolved that policy into what we're calling care and recovery centers. And the basic idea is that it needs to be in a facility that can meet certain particularly strong criteria for protecting people. So for example, there would be a separate entrance or a separate wing with a separate nursing station. There would be levels of staffing that meet particularly high standards for quality, and there would be an inspection on site by infection control experts. And that having done all of that, we would feel a special degree of confidence that this was a safe place both to care for someone who is infectious and to protect people who are not.
You've heard so much of the criticism, of course, that really boiled over this past spring when we saw so many of the fatalities that were occurring in Michigan were happening in nursing homes. And to a lot of people, it seemed nonsensical to put COVID-positive patients with non-COVID patients together in these facilities. Is this new step, is this any kind of, I don't want to call it an admission, but is it at least a realization that maybe that wasn't the best way forward early on in the pandemic, even given that we didn't know a whole lot then?
You know, I think there's been a lot of criticism from folks who haven't looked at the actual data for how Michigan performed. Michigan was incredibly hard hit by the virus early on.
Yes.
At one point, we had the third most deaths from COVID in the country.
Right.
Because of hard decisions we've made, because of Governor Whitmer's insistence on wearing masks, on social distancing, on taking aggressive steps to close down in the spring, steps that were widely opposed by the people who are issuing criticisms now. Because of those steps, the level of death in Michigan has declined relative to other states. We've gone from 3rd to 9th. And when it comes to nursing homes, we once had among the most nursing home deaths in the country, and we have steadily declined. I testified in the legislature a couple weeks ago. We ranked 18th in deaths for nursing homes. I checked just this morning. We're now 23rd in deaths in nursing homes. So I think there's a lot of criticism from folks, but if you look at the data, given that we were very hard hit early on, we have performed quite well.
It has, especially, and as other states have now dealt with their own sort of climactic moments as this has gone on. I want to ask you about these makeshift facilities that we've tried with TCF and the suburban showplace in Novi. Dr. Caldoun told me on this program about 2 months ago that we came to realize that they really were kind of imperfect answers because, for instance, if you've ever walked around the auto show and you're standing in the middle of the floor, you suddenly realize you're about half a mile, it feels like, from a bathroom. That doesn't work for a healthcare facility. So are these going to be answers, again, because you've left that possibility open in this order, or the governor has, are these going to be workable answers should we get hit with another real surge in cases?
Yeah, the alternative care sites do remain a possibility if we have a huge surge in hospital needs as backup for hospitals. We really hope that that doesn't happen and people are wearing masks and socially distancing, and washing their hands. And by doing those things, we don't have that need. When it comes to nursing residents, it's what you said. I don't think those facilities are the right places for someone who needs to be in a nursing home. They don't have the level of care. As you say, the bathrooms aren't close enough. They don't have the level of structure to keep people from falling. So that's why we have moved, as we did in the spring, to care and recovery facilities, which are built out of existing nursing homes, but have the kinds of protections and staffing and inspections that we can feel good about their safety.
Robert Gordon, the Director of Health and Human Services for the state of Michigan. Robert, thank you so much for the time. Stay well. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. We come back, we'll talk about the merger that is no more for Beaumont Hospital. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
Are you saving all you can with your Medicare plan? With Priority Health, the Medicare Advantage plan that more individuals choose in Michigan, you'll have a $0 premium, a $0 medical deductible, and no cost for virtual care visits. Of course, you'll be covered for hospital and doctor visits and prescription drugs. Plus, you'll get so much more. Important benefits such as dental exams and cleanings, annual eye exam and eyewear allowances, annual hearing exam and affordable hearing aids, and over-the-counter allowance for things like Band-Aids, pain relievers, and more. If you are Medicare eligible, call now, and you'll receive a $10 gift card for calling to get a free analysis of how much you could be saving with no obligation to enroll. It's easy to see why an all-in-one Medicare Advantage plan can save you money and provide extra benefits and access to quality care. Don't wait. Call now and see how you could start saving money with a Medicare Advantage plan from Priority Health.
Be the first to save as the Columbus Day sale starts now at Gardner White. Shop and save up to $1,000 off the largest selection of top name brand mattresses in Detroit. Or save with 0% financing up to 72 months. Tempur-Pedic just $19 a month. Beautyrest Black just $16 a month. And Stearns & Foster just $15 a month. Plus free delivery, free TVs, free bikes, free power bases. The biggest Columbus Day sale ever starts now at Gardner White, Detroit's #1 mattress store.
Facts have never been more important than now.
Grant Herms, the Local 4 Trust Index team, have been fact-checking the debate.
Full list of the claims we checked live during last night's debate on clickondetroit.com.
It was a challenging night, to say the least.
Sign up for the Trust Index newsletter at Click on Detroit. News? Evrod's got it. Local 4 News Today.
Welcome back. We've talked quite a bit on the program about the proposed merger involving Beaumont Health System. Eric Starkman has been writing about the proposed merger for Deadline Detroit. In fact, by far, I would say the most aggressive and eager writer on this topic. And suddenly on Friday, we find that merger talks had gone from being put on hold to collapsing altogether. And Eric Starkman joins me now to talk about that. Eric, I'm very curious when the news broke on Friday that it was off. What were your first thoughts?
Oh, they were actually bittersweet. The merger made no sense, and it was a bad deal for Southeastern Michigan residents. But there's still a major problem with Beaumont, and that's the management. And until that management is turfed out, the hospital is going to continue to hemorrhage and lose, prominent talent, and just have, really bad morale, a workforce with a really bad morale.
Oh gosh, we've seen so many sort of what amount to votes of no confidence from the employees who have been against this merger from the start. But I think one of the tipping points, you were the one of the reporters who talked with Congressman Andy Levin this past week, who made it clear that he was going to do whatever he could to stop the merger. And you had a couple of Royal Oak area lawmakers who were with him on that. How much do you think that played? Did that play anything into them calling it quits on this?
I don't know this firsthand, but I would guess it did. When you have a congressman, and he, was very clear that he wasn't, just spewing rhetoric. He said, I'm determined to stop this deal. Now, it's not clear to me what exactly he could do.
Yeah.
But he's a prominent congressman, and I don't think the board wanted to stick around and find out exactly what he could do.
I think one of the things that struck a lot of people, and in a way, John Fox, when he was on Flashpoint this past summer, even kind of admitted to it, that this did not seem to be a marriage of equals for Beaumont to hook up with Aurora, and that the hospital system was kind of marrying beneath it. Why didn't that seem to be as obvious to those that were involved in trying to make this happen? Or is the answer too obvious, that it was just a money play?
Well, I think it was a money play as far as John Fox is concerned. I mean, if the hospital was sold, my guess is he has change of control provisions in his contract. We know that the former CEO of Oakwood was given at least $9 million as a golden parachute after Oakwood merged with Beaumont. So, it was likely lucrative for John Fox and his deputies, but this was a very bad deal. It was basically just giving away the hospital to Advocate Aurora, and they had very, very little risk.
What do you think then that this entire experience in Odyssey, and I doubt we're going to see an end to merger talk of this hospital system or any others for that matter, what does this tell us about the state of healthcare in America right now?
Well, the state of healthcare in America is pretty pathetic. But, you know, around this time, everybody wants to blame, you know, the president. But in fact, you know, hospitals are state-run, state-controlled. And I hope you don't mind me saying this on your show, but I think that the silence of Governor Whitmer and Attorney General Nessel and Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingell speaks very poor of their leadership in the state.
Is it so? It feels to. I mean, obviously, we saw lawmakers start to weigh in on it this past week. You think they should have been there earlier?
Oh, definitely. And let me just give you an example so you don't think I'm just spewing my opinion. In Ohio, the University of Toledo put out a notice that they were going to ask request for proposals to sell their teaching hospital. And it wasn't even a sale. It was just request for proposals. Right out of the gate, Marcy Kaptur, who's the longest serving woman in the House of Representatives, issued a statement right out of the gate saying, you don't sell a hospital in the midst of a pandemic. Then you had the Attorney General of Ohio immediately leaking to the press, I'm going to be looking at this deal. And then you had the former mayor of Toledo leading a movement to stop any possible sale of the hospital. Michigan did not have that kind of leadership.
Interesting thoughts on it. If you're interested in more of Eric Starkman's contrarian thoughts, we will point you to his blog, starkmanapproved.com. Eric, I appreciate your work on this topic, and thanks for the time today.
Thanks so much.
You bet. That's going to do it for us. Meet the Press coming up next. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time right back here for Flashpoint.